The recording has started.
All right, and then
Well, I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the seventh grade. I went to the seventh grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer, I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell, he says, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word? I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose. And that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
thank you for joining us. You are listening to The Disclaimers by Davidlee Buess and Edward Johnston. Today's date is September 25th, 2017. Go ahead and take it away, Ed.
Thank you, Dave, and I would like to thank you for joining us this evening. This is based on education and intelligence. And that's the way I'm going to lead this off, because we're going to get into filing your structure on public employees again. We're going to make a little series of this so people get to know the truth of our elected and public servants compared to slave and master. And that's the one point that people have to start comprehending the real reality of the Constitution and what it works for, how it works, and the structure. Because I've been watching a lot of people here lately going off on different tangents and don't have a concept of the Constitution. I watch a lot of these new people that I've dealt with. They have their own little, starting their own little court organizations. Well, the main thing is, folks, we have a court system that works if we control it, if we take it back. It's called we, the lawful bloodline Americans, as well as legal immigration. Immigration has no rights in this country unless they pay their public servants, their salaries, their taxes, and go by administrative rules. That's the reality. It says it by law. And that is the one point by law people need to comprehend. And there is the other point that Senate Bill 510, Congress bill, makes it illegal to grow, sell, and trade or sell homegrown foods. So right now, you're elected and public servants, the Democrats and Republicans of the British government, are telling you you have no rights to eat, drink water without paying them the privilege of life, their God, their Bible. And I'm going to get into that one here right now, seeing that that was my opening to get in. Tennessee church shooting. Suspect sent the suicide text. So he was already on suicide watch. Not only that, I did some research and reading up on this thing. Okay, the one thing is the First Amendment gives every man and woman a right to freedom of speech and freedom, as it says, of religion. When it says say from religion, it's the same difference. Okay, it's called common courtesy and respect. Now, Dave and I are not liable for anybody who does crazy, stupid shit. Now, the bottom line comes down to this.
Thank
All
you.
right, everybody has a right to their own religion. I don't care what religion it is, so long as it's not Muslim, because Muslims are banned from this country by executive order and by the 1952 Immigration and the original Immigration Act that came through by Thomas Jefferson in 1812, because that's called the Barbarian Wars. And please read the real truth. Why in this religion? Because our forefathers had some insight, because they came from a foreign country that you were beheaded or suffered extreme body damage if you did not conform to their religion. And that's the one point that people do not comprehend. You have the freedom of religion. It does not mean that you have the right to go react with your religion on other individuals. And I hate using that word, man, woman, child. And go ahead. You were saying something, Dave?
Yeah, you got to remember that it's freedom of religion and also freedom from religion. Depends on what your beliefs are.
Correct.
So
and that is the point. Your beliefs are not supposed to go out and do harm to any other man, woman, or child. We are supposed to be having, respect and honor in this country, because I've had many discussions with people last week, and it's interesting to watch people who want to argue, about the Constitution. Well, until the day you actually comprehend the Constitution, Second Amendment says, shall not be infringed. I have the right to my arms. I don't care if it's a tank, grenades. But if you harm somebody, that means either you go to prison or you're exterminated for the serious of the crime. And I don't believe life imprisonment for murder and that structure, so that way the states can make financial gain from somebody else's misery.
Well,
and that's the point that we got to get back to. And go ahead. Were you saying something, Dave?
So I think our founding fathers intended that amendment for the sole purpose of the right to bear arms so that you could survive. You got to remember, things have changed over the years. Back in the day, you had to hunt fish kill game in order to have food and to protect yourself.
And your family and home.
The Conservation Act of the Second Amendment was well established. I don't think things have changed all that much because we still seem to have a bunch of heathens who want to control our lives. And what is the supreme legal maxim? When the law of man does not prevail, the law of nature must. So people need to comprehend that for a fact. The fact that we, the number one branch of government, people, okay, when the law of man does not prevail, the law of nature must. Therefore, we have the right to defend and protect our lives, property, and families. Any government entity who changes and alters the Constitution has committed high treason against the Constitution. It takes
and that's a real fact.
To alter the Constitution. You cannot do it by legislative act, nor can you do it by executive order.
And you can't do it by trickery of a vote of the public.
That's right.
And that's the one thing George Bush Sr. is definitely wrong on. And let me clarify, definitely wrong on. He says we need to go by the rule of man, not the rule of nature. But rule of nature is better than the rule of man because it's dealt with. The rule of man, if you have a life and death situation, could take years to settle in what they call their administrative judicial court systems.
You know, Ed, here's a question for the general public. Where do you find in law common law? Where are those writings? Where do you, when you walk into court and you're under common law, why can't you find those printed out somewhere?
And that's the other point people do not comprehend at all, is that the main point of common law, if you look at real history in European Union, common law is founded under the King's Contract.
That's true.
Not by we the people. It's a British foreign structure. And that's people need to comprehend the reality of foreign government and American government, because your congressman, your state representative, that's why I call them a representative, because they're representing you because you're not responsible or educated enough to represent yourself. And that is the one point that people do not comprehend, that one, at all. Because the whole thing is that you're supposed to be representing yourself.
Well,
or you could have somebody represent you called counsel. Attorneys are not counsel. And that's the one thing I request people to educate themselves on that point. Because the one thing with counsel, that means anybody who has the knowledge of the man and woman that is standing before the people that are accusing that man or woman.
Well, we just come across
something
the other day, Ed, that changes that statement you just made.
Go ahead.
Anyone who believes in the golden rule, do unto others you'd have them do unto you, is an attorney. So you can be your own representative.
Well, are attorneys and lawyers liars? Isn't that the Black Law Dictionary, Bouvier, and then by the Bar Registration, British Auxiliary Registers, the King and Queen of England?
Yeah, here is the reading on that what I just got through stating. The highest social law is the golden rule, quote, do unto others as you would have them, prefer them to do unto you. Matthew 7:12, 22:36 through 40, Luke 6:31, and equity. Blackstall Dictionary, daily living of the Golden Rule is the highest practice of law and is necessary for a stable society. Such practice of law cannot require a license and compels the conclusion that every man who professes and lives the Golden Rule is a lawyer. When man is denied assistance to counsel to protect his certain unalienable rights endowed by his Creator and secured by the Constitution, this weakens his position as a citizen, thus weakens the country as a whole. This is giving aid and comfort to the enemy and treason. So comprehend what the Golden Rule is and practice it. You're your own attorney.
And actually, state and federal government, by their own administrative rules, that says a man or a woman who comprehends the law, and law is not statute, codes, and administration, that he is an attorney, so long as he...
Law, statute, codification, if the Supreme Court would happen to rule on that, any changes that the court makes also changes that law, code, and codification. So people may be trained in law, but ignorant of law.
That's true. You know, that is the point that, people don't comprehend law. And so you're supposed to go by the Constitution, either by lawful bloodline American or legal citizen, because when you become, your bloodline in this country becomes lawful, then you have rights, not privileges. And there's no way to serve.
During the Kennedy assassination, there were so many legal actions going into courts that Congress initiated the right of the private attorney general.
Mm-hmm.
And you could represent anyone in court as long as it was for the benefit of the nation as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't be just for yourself. It had to benefit the entire nation. There are several rulings on that. If you look up private attorney general, that is well established in law and congressional legislation. So people think that they have to rely on attorneys and lawyers and all this. No, you don't. No, you do not. So if you are well versed in law and can represent yourself in the kangaroo courts of America, go for it. The Congress is the ones that made man and animal, so I guess we have kangaroo courts ran by jackasses.
Yeah, I have to agree with that statement. But see, they have no choice to put man as an animal. Just because we have a brain and think, that makes us more dangerous than any other animal on the face of the earth. Look at what we're not only doing to our food resources, but look what we're doing to destroy the rest of the structure. These guys are pushing nuclear power, nuclear war, nuclear this bullshit. And look what it's done to the West Coast. We got Hanford leaking in the rivers and the streams. We've got the ocean out here on the West Coast infected with Fukushima. What is that, 1,000 years from radiation to evaporate, they claim? So people, you got to realize, and the food resources on the West Coast is drying up. in the grocery store food that you grow on the store, that you go to the store to eat, 60% of it is not food. You have to realize and look at what you're eating. Read the chemicals that are on the packages, and we are doing this. This is why when it comes to FDA and people say, oh, they're there to protect us. How come they let so many poison chemicals into the food resources? They're not there to protect us. They're to make a financial gain for their own board members and their own personal gain.
Well, if they don't do it one way, they just lace it down with sugar. So
sweetness is kindness, they say, and then that's why we end up with rotted teeth and mental issues because of sugar. Go ahead, David.
High contents of sugar over time creates diabetes.
Oh, yeah.
And that diabetes leads to death and destruction of your limbs. So, the agenda out of the UN is to kill 90% of the world's population and make the rest of us slaves. So if the Food and Drug Administration will not tell you what the maximum daily intake of sugar is, that's attempted murder.
Mm-hmm. I would think parents would have the right to file on the board members.
I sent a complaint to the Department of Justice, and do you think I got a response to that one?
Nope.
Because I think it's the Food and Drug Administration's responsibility to tell people how much sugar intake they should have in a day's time, especially since it's for public health.
Well, not only that, don't we pay them every time you buy a bag of sugar? It goes into a tax for that?
Well, it certainly does. So they're in violation of their contract.
Mm-hmm.
To protect the general population.
Right.
I'm sick and tired of the Food and Drug Administration acting like, they're God of some kind. And they don't owe any allegiance to we the people to protect us on health issue. I mean, you got to remember, any new drug comes out has to have a certain amount of side effects that are worse than the disease itself. I wonder why we can't find cures.
Well, they can't.
No profit for the corporation in cures, is there, Ed?
No, not for the insurance companies. Remember, they insure you to die.
Well, that's true.
And that's the one thing people do not comprehend of reinsurance they do on each and every insurance policy.
In my opinion, having the Food and Drug Administration overseeing this nation's drugs is a fart in a windstorm, because I think the chemical companies, pharmaceutical companies donate a lot of money to that organization every year.
Oh, yeah?
I wouldn't want to call it a bribe, but, I would love to check the pocketbooks and the money trail of everybody that works in the administrative of the Food and Drug Administration to find out where their money comes from and how they get so damn rich.
Well, not only that, Dave, the other point is that all those, lobbyists are supposed to be registered under the 1938 Foreign Registration Administration Act.
You may have a valid point there, Edward.
Well, and that's the point that, like I said, it's been 3 weeks I'm putting this thing together. I got some new information, so I want to make sure when I put this template together, basically, because I'm going to be serving it myself, and not only that, on my own governor and House and Senate members and House members, not mine, but their structure, not mine. But I want to make sure that people comprehend this structure of the truth, because that was put in place So that way we did not have to worry about foreigners coming into our country. That includes elected and public servants, because remember, they work for the British government. Your House and Senate members, the Bar, British Auxiliary Register to the King and Queen of England. Knowing the real laws compared to what one thinks the law is.
Yeah, they're barristers, tax collectors for the crown. Look at that bit of court, Black's Law Dictionary, page 805, 8th edition. Judges, lawyers.
Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
Judges, lawyers, and attorneys are a member of the Inn of Court Association Foundation. They are appointed to the bar upon graduation. They become the title of barrister, tax collector for the crown. That's conflict of interest.
Oh, wouldn't you suggest that everybody should ask for a conflict of interest statement from the attorney, district attorney, and a judge?
Oh, most certainly. When I do that, they refuse to talk to me all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah. Then nobody ever gets a court case out of it, too.
I filed a case in court, got the case number, and then I made an addendum to it, and I said, I want your conflict of interest statement. The next thing I got was a letter from the court telling me that my case was dismissed under, I think it was Rule 5, failure to state a claim. Isn't that funny how when you ask the court for a conflict of interest that, your case gets dismissed for failure to state a claim?
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's their way of getting even with us for being a smart ass to know enough to ask for the conflict of interest.
Right.
I don't have any respect for judges who violate my right to file a case in the court and state a claim, and they never read the paperwork long enough to comprehend the fact that it says claim.
Or injured party.
Oh, that was on the cover sheet.
No, but you always got to put corpus electi 3771 in all your claims, because if you don't put that in, the court says they cannot represent the case because you're not claiming to be the injured man or woman.
Well, I put that on my cover sheet, but the crook of the court removed it before he put it into his electronic filing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's called tampering with evidence.
Not only that, that's tampering with a witness to the court case.
Most certainly. You have to understand that the largest homegrown terrorist in your court case is the crook of the court. I mean, clerk of the court. God, I'm so used to calling him crook of the court.
Well, he is a crook.
But that's what these guys do. They're paid to screw up your paperwork for you before and after the case is settled. Michelle's got living proof of what the clerk of the court will do to you following a settlement in court.
Yeah, that's a fact. You have, and so have I.
Well, in my first lawsuit against the IRS in Judge Routson's court in Hancock County, Ohio, the crook of the court, I had private attorney general on my paperwork, meaning I can represent myself and represent the case, removed it before she did the electronic filing.
Mm-hmm.
That's happened more than once in these pseudo corporate courts. So I have no love for the American judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Congress is just as guilty as the court for allowing it to continue. We, the people, have the right to alter and abolish any law, but I don't see Congress giving us our redress of grievance. I know in 2002 it was never done. Congress committed an act of treason, and no one said a word. When we, the people, have a right to redress a grievance constitutionally established, and Congress refuses to hear it, that's high treason against the Constitution and a violation of their oath.
That's true.
So why aren't they in jail? Every damn one of them.
That's true.
That's a good point, huh?
That's a fact. You know?
So Bob Schultz and Joe Bannister, Larry B. Kraft, I wonder why they didn't go after Congress and the court for treason in 2002. When the hearing on taxation by We the People Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a statute of limitation on treason, so if those people happen to get a hold of this conversation tonight, maybe they'll wake up and go after them.
That is a fact. There is no time limit on treason. It's just like fraud.
That's right. So
you know, it's like the other point I want to bring up to. The other point is I want to bring up dealing with the NFL. Beside that, all these attorneys and judges own the jails, you know, and it's like the Democrats members own the jail. They have stock. Go read their stock investments. Be an adult. Quit being a child.
Well, look at Trial Lawyers Inc. Incorporated out of Dun & Bradstreet. They're a registered communist organization, Ed.
I know. How come nobody else comprehends that one?
Because people don't bother to research, Ed. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
They think that, lawyer wouldn't lie to you.
Same crap, Ed.
Go ahead.
Those in Congress pertaining to the courts, they act like they have permission to do as they please. No, they don't.
They have a set of guidelines to follow.
That's right. That's what the
administrative rule, I believe.
Well, not only that, the administration rules state that. And that's the point that people have got to comprehend what the administrative rules say compared to what they think it says.
Okay.
You know, it is one of those factors.
How true.
Yeah.
I have posted on Facebook a couple of letters that I wrote years ago to my representatives in Congress, and never got any response to it. I showed that to the FBI when I was over there Friday, and the intakes officer looked at me and he says, "And they didn't respond to this?" I says, "No." He said, "They've got to."
Wait a minute, say that word again about our public employees when they get a letter. They are supposed to do what?
They must respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in my case, it's been years and I haven't heard the first response from it.
No, I agree with you. It's like when I filed on property taxes fraud 4 years ago, and I even got Senate Representative Greenlick and senators of the meeting on the Oregon State House and floor public hearing. Property taxes are voluntary.
So
Americans.
So are income taxes, Ed.
Oh yeah, no, definitely all income tax.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a problem paying the excise tax on gasoline because that pays for the road, folks, not your property taxes, not your city taxes. Within the registration of elected to public service, registered church member, registered immigration, and, that's all in the taxes when you pay your driver's license fee tax, all in your administration taxes. But, your gas tax covered your road and driveways. Now, in the state of Oregon in 2006, they had $500 million just in the 2 years biennium they could prove how the budget disappeared.
Well,
and we
here's something. I don't know if you're aware of this one, Ed, but are not all roads postal roads?
Technically, if you go by that, yeah, they have claimed the postal roads going back to, what is that called? The Pony Express?
Yes. And whose job is it to maintain a postal road?
Hmm.
The post office. So if the post office is maintaining the postal roads, what are they really using the sales tax on gasoline for?
Hmm. Well,
really
yeah,
getting
and
their
that's
pocket
the
rate
other
for that?
point. How come that we're supposed to be mailing our stuff for free? That's supposed to be on a reduction act, and not only that, by the insurance and reinsurance paid on, what is that called? Stamps? Because remember, they reinsure all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How come people don't comprehend the facts?
Isn't that called rape, rob, and pillage?
Extortion at gunpoint, yeah.
Oh, most certainly. My, oh, my, oh, my.
You know, and that is the valid point, that people are not comprehending how our country really is to work. You know, no offense to people who believe in their religion, but religion is not law here. The Constitution is the law of the land.
What does religion have to do with congressional acts? Why do you think they call legislation bills? Because it establishes another way to which they can extort money from you.
Hmm?
It is a bill.
At gunpoint.
There you go. So if they develop a bill, meaning we the people have to pay for it, I thought they were to protect us from extortion.
Hmm? Isn't that supposed to be their divine
I don't think they're doing
God?
a very good job of that. And how many bills have they written that have the approval of the American people like they're supposed to?
That is a fact.
I don't ever remember voting on any bill coming out of Congress.
Hmm? Well, and the other side of the republic, the law, the Constitution is the law of the land. We're not supposed to vote on anything, technically.
Well, I'm just saying. How do we
democracy that, that people are able to set up to rape, rob, and pillage.
How do we establish our a bill, for instance, unless we vote on it?
Hmm?
Can't have one without the other. You know, if you got a bill and you're supposed to vote on it, they got to bring it to a vote of we the people, because we are the first branch of government.
Hmm?
That's what that Constitution states, isn't it? We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. In other words, we the people come together to form a more perfect union.
Well, yeah, I want to hit you on this point. It doesn't say we the people and the citizens or nationals of the United States. It says we the people of the United States. So that means we're from this soil.
And that means you have to be a bloodline American, Article 5, to be one of we the people.
Hmm?
So
yeah, and if you're not one of we the people, you have privileges until you get honored.
Yes.
By bloodline.
Yep.
And that is the point that people have to do this. This is why, you know, dealing with the 1938 Foreign Registration Act, it states that all elected and public servants, immigration, have to mandatory register. You know, I don't care. There's no such thing as amnesty for immigration. And that's real law. There's no immigration amnesty. And the one thing, if anybody knows, Ronald Reagan did in 1981 or 2, stated that, okay, there was agreement for 1 million people only, not per year, as Obama lied to the world. It's 1 million people right then, right when he signed that contract, and to shut the borders down. That was the contract to close the border. And if you don't read it, that's your problem. You know, this fantasy, like I said, I watch these people write, well, I was born on this earth, so I have rights. Well, that depends on where you were born, because if you're born in another country, you don't have rights, because in China, you try to claim rights, you get shot. You know, it's like, wake up people to the truth, you know, of what's really going on. You know? I mean, right now in England, they're terrified. Oh, what is that? Because Muslims are taking over England. We got Muslims in the United States trying to take over our local and public servants. And people go, well, they have a right because they are religion and freedom of religion. It's called freedom of religion. Not your religion has any God-blasted authority on this soil, in this land. Your religion is mind control. Your religion tells you to go against what Mother Nature tells you, to eat your food, how to hunt and fish, how to take care and respect your neighbor. Because even, I don't care, Roman Catholic, Christians, you know, Muslims, you know, Jews, they all lie to their children, and then it's acceptable? I mean, come on, think about it, folks. When you grew up, Halloween, Christmas, Tooth Fairy, Disneyland, it's all a lie. You know, how come we don't tell the truth to the children, and we're supposed to cover these tracks and say, oh, we're trying to protect the children when we're not protecting them or our own bloodline? Like, I have this one guy that's on the internet many times going back and forth to me, and he goes, well, what are you talking about bloodline? There's no such thing as a bloodline. I finally got it through the guy's head, I think. And I said, do you have any children? He goes, well, yeah, I have 2. So, in other words, were they born in this country? He goes, well, yeah. I said, do you know your heritage? No. And I said, is that your bloodline, or did they come out of a test tube? And I never heard back from him after that point. It's like either your bloodline exists, and only man and woman can create bloodline, not DNA. That's the point when they're doing this structure with DNA testing and all this stuff. Let me tell you something, folks. They've already perfectly had the structure of cloning done in 1905. They've been doing it professionally since 1905. There's nothing new. That's the point. Huh? Go ahead, Dave.
I say, but not prior.
Right, not prior, yes.
So, in other words, the Constitution, when it speaks of we the people, and when was that written? 1849?
The Constitution?
Yeah. Or 17.
Yeah, 1774 was the first production of it.
Okay, all right. So we had the preamble to the Constitution, okay? And it says on there, we the people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since the people, by Supreme Court ruling, are sovereign, not governments, we the people would be the number one branch of government, as I've stated before. And then through the Constitution, we establish legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government. The office of president, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say we, the elected in public service, establish this to be the Constitution for the United States of America, etc. So the administrative rule that we, the people, set up in establishing the Constitution, this Constitution and treaties written shall be the supreme law of the land. And the 16th American Jurisprudence, Section 177, second edition, very plainly states, any law written in violation of this Constitution is as though it was never written, and no one's obligated to obey it.
That's right.
So if we have incompetent jackasses in the Congress and Senate and the office of President who don't comprehend that, maybe they need to go back to school and learn it.
Yeah, it's not designed for personal and financial gain for any religion or the Vatican.
That's true.
You know, as the Vatican is still trying to claim that we need to go to one world religion, we need to go to one world government. And it's like, no, that's like these people that I argue on the internet. Well, I was born here, so I have rights. Well, if you want rights, you either know your lawful and legal difference. Then you go to China, like I said before, Ireland, Scotland, and see what you do. Because when you go to their country, oh, what are you? You're an immigrant. You have no rights. Even Mexico, you cross the line in Mexico, you go to prison because you have no rights in Mexico.
Can own land in Mexico?
Huh?
No foreigner can own land in Mexico.
Not only that, that's true. And if you're an immigrant and you don't have the assets to back you up, you go to jail. How simple is it for people to comprehend that if you don't have the assets to back yourself up? If you go to France and England, if you don't have the assets, they used to ship you out. Now what they're doing with the Muslims, and see, this is the point that people go, well, we have a constitutional right in this country. If you go against the Constitution, it's called treason. It's a capital offense. Don't ask anybody to have kindness for you on that, because if we don't protect our bloodline, our country, there is no future even for your own children. When are people going to sit and comprehend the real truth instead of the fantasy they're proclaiming to the world?
Well, the thing that really pisses me off is that the Muslims come over here to I thought they came over here to get away from the oppression and stuff of their country.
Well, that's what they claim.
So why do they want to bring Sharia law back in here? I thought they wanted to give all that crap up. So if they want to give it up, then don't bring it over here and try to enforce it here. I don't want it. I got a constitution, constitutional law, common law. I don't need your damn Sharia law.
That's right.
Not only do I not want it, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want nothing to do with it. Period. And then as far as I'm concerned, any state government who supports Sharia law in any way, shape, or form is committing treason against the Constitution, subject to, hanging.
That's right.
So wake up, state legislators. You're committing high treason, violation of your oath to support and defend the Constitution. I don't want to hear this Sharia law crap.
No, I agree with you there. That is the one point. Take your Sharia law and go back to your country. You are not welcomed here.
Because if that's what you want to practice,
then
do it on your own soil. I don't want to hear it. I'm tired of,
that's a fact.
I'm tired of foreigners coming in here and acting like they own the goddamn country. Nope, you don't. You never have, and you never will. Because I do not consent. I do not consent. You've already given Mr. Trump the fact that these people have no business here in the first place. So, Mr. Trump, I suggest you obey the law of the land and get rid of them now.
That's right.
Later. Ed and I both have sent you the legislative acts and the rulings. So
the real history.
Do your job.
We deal with facts, not fantasy. You know,
that's the law to him. That's all it takes. If he fails to respond responsibly as the president and CEO of the corporation, to hell with him. Fire him.
That's right. That is the point. And it's up to we, the people, to stand up. It's like if you read mine and Dave's instrument that we filed with Judge Scalia in the Supreme Court on the separation of lawful and legal in this country, there is a difference. There is a legal and lawful, big difference. And that is the point that people need to comprehend the structure of lawful and legal. I mean, I'm going this right now on Facebook where they're telling me to dream on and, you know, it's okay for Mexicans and foreigners to invade this country, you know, and it's like they don't read the law. I just put up dealing with Mexico. Under Mexico law, illegal immigrants is a felony, punished up to 2 years in prison. Immigrants who are detained and comes back in and enters the country shall do a maximum minimum of 10 years in prison. That's it.
Well, you know, Ed, you and I filed a constitutional criminal complaint. Remember that?
I sure do. I still pass it out. It's on our sites. It's on our website.
You are aware that we never got a lawful response to that as required.
Well, I know, and that's the one thing that we're going to have to be putting back out and putting it, you know, it already has a spot for people, legal and immigration, to sign, autograph, for our rights.
We can now, as a result of that, place upon the Congress of the United States as a notice of existence of a First Amendment administrative commercial lien process of the United States of America as of June 17, 2014, a consensual public commercial lien.
That's right.
A commercial lien against public officials for violation of their required oath of office, which is equal to the military oath to support this nation and its Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This lien is supported by the filing of the commercial complaint and is also a commercial lien against public officers, officials, for rebellion, insurrection, and treason committed against the nation and the Constitution. So it also is a commercial lien against public officers, officials, rebellion, insurrection, or treason committed against the nation and the Constitution. It is also consequently a commercial lien against the public officials' violation of the natural and civil rights of freedom, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of the people of the United States of America, and is also a penalty against the public office's failure to provide the necessary, proper, and lawful officials for substituting false, fictitious, and fraudulent services. It is also, therefore, to provide restitution and rebates of tax back to the public as an exercise of the First Amendment, the right of the people to peacefully assemble. And I think this goes
I believe you're right on that one.
With Congress, remember in 2002, Congress refused to grant to we the people our right to redress a grievance. This Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land, and every judge in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the ordinary notwithstanding. U.S. Constitution, Article 6, Paragraph 2. Also see the Amendment 5, just compensation. So, people, there you have it. Congress or any elected official who refuses to answer your document, your letters, your whatever, in any way, shape, or form, you can file a lien on for violation of these constitutional oaths.
Don't forget that includes public servants.
That's exactly right. Public and elected servants, your mayors, your judges, clerks of the court,
city council.
City council, most definitely. President, vice president, Speaker of the House, President pro temp of the Senate. They're all covered by this. And they can't just give you a bullshit letter. They've got to deal with the subject at hand.
Yeah, that is a fact. And if they don't deal with the subject at hand, and that's the point where I'm working to finish this, well, long letter, I should say. And, you know, it's like I'm working on that one, so I want to make sure that when this thing goes public, that when you file and sign this and you put the elected and public servant's name on it, okay, and that means you have to put their name on it, their employee number on it, and so that way you have rights instead of privileges by claiming that. And I will be putting in, I got to go back and I got to go search a couple of the laws that I have on the structure that states dealing with citizens. If you pay your taxes and go by administrative rules, what they got to do is protect you under that, so long as you are defending the Constitution law of this soil. You have rights, not privileges. So it is putting the truth out there so people comprehend it. Our forefathers wrote this stuff. We quote it not just to hear ourselves. We quote it so that way you know the law, we know the law, and so that way there's only one law of this land. There's no such thing as democracy when it really comes down to it. And everybody says, oh, we're allowed to vote. Well, isn't that, when you look at the term democracy, that is mob rule. So when you're voting on stuff, you're claiming that you are a national or citizen, claiming mob rule, enemy of this country, to commit terrorism for personal and financial gain. I mean, it's really that simple. It's not hard to be a rocket scientist to figure out the way our forefathers put together. And I'm not talking going all the way back to 1776. I'm even talking like FDR when they put in the Structure of Executive Order 2040, who wrote and stated this stuff in the structure, and people don't comprehend what it really means. Everybody wants to interpretate something for their own gain. And it's not for personal and financial gain, because if you read the tax law, the actual tax law, it says that the only ones who are required to pay taxes, elected and public servants, registered church member, all immigration, without a questionable doubt. And it even states that lawful bloodline Americans are not responsible to pay taxes. And that goes back to the Indian, what they call the Indian structure. And I even had a conversation where I was disrespected by one native that I was working with. That anyhow, it's one of those deals. But it's like, you know, he's trying to tell me, well, they're saying India's from India that came from India, and it's like, if you actually read real damn history, all right, what was his name? Columbus. They're taking down his statues throughout the country because he was not a man who discovered America. He was a man that came and raped, robbed, and pillaged the children, murdered the children, murdered the women, enslaved the men and took them back to other countries and sold them as slaves. It's like, people, you got to learn how to read real history. That is the point, real history. But
right.
People don't read real history. They want to interpret it. Because I know I was light in school about Columbus discovered America. But I was in the last part when they had civics in the state of California, where they actually taught us the separation of a republic form of government compared to a democracy point of government of the British government. And if you do the reading and it says federal government, you look it online throughout the entire world, it says Britain under the Vatican. How come people do not comprehend the real facts?
You see, there's where I got on Trump, Ed. I said, since the Pope claims to own everything, let him declare world peace.
Yeah, well, he's supposed to disbarred all the licensed attorneys and stuff.
Well, he don't want peace because he wants to take over the whole world.
Yeah, that was called the Treaty of 1213 that I keep arguing with people about, the Magna Carta of 1215, and they keep telling me, oh, you don't comprehend or understand, Ed, what the Magna Carta is. And I said, isn't that from the European Union? Isn't that a British contract that the king had with the Pope?
Well, that contract
Go ahead.
1213 died with the death of the Pope and the king.
Yeah, lived through the king part because he had bloodline, the Pope didn't.
That's right. So there was no one for the Pope to hand it down to.
Mm-hmm.
Died upon the death of the Pope, and it died with the death of the king as well. So there is what the idiots who claim that Treaty of 1213 is in existence today because they don't know shit.
They create it, but they don't know it. You know, and that is the frustration. Yeah, we've been going on right now for an hour. I'd like to probably open up the board, see if anybody's got any thoughts before we continue on.
Okay, that's a good idea.
If nobody's got thoughts, we'll continue on.
Q&A session has started.
To the Q&A session, hit *6. Thank you.
So, anybody would like to chime in, please chime in. This is all about all of us. Lawful bloodline Americans and legal citizen, not immigration. So if anybody would like to speak up, please speak up, and then we'll get back into our conversation then. Okay? I guess nobody wants to chime in right now, so we'll get back into the main point of, and you could always put *6 in and always chime in. But the one thing is, the most valuable point is realize that you can file on your elected and public servants. And if they're not registered in the Foreign Registration Act, you're the one that has to file through them and the criminal charges. It's like I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they're like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and it's like, excuse me, you know, you never filed on the judges, you never filed on attorney, and the response I get, what does it matter if I file on them or not? I'm still going through the issue. And it's like, if you cannot stand for your children, and you're claiming you're standing up for your children when you are not standing up for your children, I cannot be involved in that. Either you're standing up for your children and being realistic, or you just don't give a damn. And don't tell me I don't comprehend and I don't understand. You know, if you read something enough times, unless you are severely, and I'm going to use the correct terminology, mentally retarded. I hate it when people change these terms and they got to fluff it up with sugar instead of the truth, because either you're mentally retarded or you are not. It's that simple. This is not a case that goes on by other structures and the means that what people think it is. Because if somebody is mentioned
of the legal community, let's take Black's Law Dictionary. What are they up to now? The 10th revision of the Black's Law Dictionary to change the meaning of words to agree with their con job?
Mm-hmm. Well, for their personal financial gain against yours.
Oh, certainly. So my one question I have is if we have all these legal dictionaries, why aren't they in Webster?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be beneficial for the law dictionaries to also be their definitions of words to be included in the Webster dictionary?
Mm-hmm. Well, doesn't it even say in the Bible that it says, don't trust no other God? I am your only God, but what is God when it comes down to it? Who is God? You know, God is what you know to be true and honor, not the tooth fairy.
Well, I guess if God created the first laws of man because of the possibility of civil disorder, that was known as the Ten Commandments.
Don't forget that civil disobedience.
And so if he comprehended the heart of man to be evil and gave us the Ten Commandments to whereby we could have some point of law to judge those who commit crimes, I think the supreme law would be the Ten Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
And those should come first in the civil laws of the world.
That is the point. That's the one thing you got to look at. The structure, local churches. Oh, wait a minute. I guess we got a speaker, so let's open up the floor back. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ed, we have this corporate soul, and the head of the corporate soul claims he's parentis patre to the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, under that corporate soul, we have a subcorporation, which is, and also that corporate soul, that happens to be a terrorist corporation. Been burning people at the stake for over 1,000 years now.
That would be religion, corp.
Well, that's a corporate soul.
I know, but that's part of religion.
Yeah, it's a corporate soul.
Right.
It's a corporate soul. That means one man's in charge of that corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And under that corporation, we have the British monarchy, which is another corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And the Queen claims she's parentis patre.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the Pope and the Queen, and he's also the head of the Knights of Rosicrucian, and the Jesuits. Now, under that, they're claiming our corporation, the United States Corporation, the 18 U.S.C. 3002 50A, as a subcorporation of that corporation.
Right.
But they're trying to bring it in under this corporate soul.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen the paperwork for this corporate soul, but it's supposed to be registered as a corporate soul.
Yeah, through the Vatican.
Yeah, that would be the Vatican. Now, if
that the corporation is a dead entity, how can you have a corporate soul? Because the soul lives on, and the Supreme Court ruled corporations are dead entities. That would be a conflict in law, in my opinion.
Well, I guess we got one man in charge of dead entity then. But anyway, it is registered. I'm told it's registered as a corporate soul. There's a few churches, not very many, that are not 501c, but they're in the status of soul. And they're supposed to be in a higher status than the government itself. So anyway, but I don't find any of these organizations to not be terrorist organizations. The U.S. corporation, especially a terrorist organization, they're sponsoring the terrorist organizations of even the West Virginia Corporation. And refused to prosecute the terrorist acts of the West Virginia Corporation. In fact, they wanted to conduct them. So I think the key is, you know, I guess Mussolini said that fascism was the right word, corporatism was. But I'm going to go with that.
To overthrow the United States government. If you're telling me that the church has supreme ruling, that would be treason against the Constitution.
Well, Dave, all I know is they issue corporate souls to them. They issue corporate soul papers to them.
We have a right to freedom of religion, and we have the right to freedom from religion. So just because there are church corporations doesn't mean everybody's a member thereof.
No, but in the Catholic Church is both corporate soul.
It may be, but they're dead entities again.
Yeah.
Are not corporations made up of law and statute?
That's what I always thought.
So
but it's terrorist law, evidently, because they've been conducted under terrorism, especially the Catholic Church, the Knights of Malta, and the Jesuits for over 1,000 years now.
Yeah, but the church corporation is not a government entity. It's an organization. It cannot make law and statute against the governments of their nations and or the United States.
Well, this man claiming to be in the status of parentis patres, he's claiming to be your daddy, they have a treaty with him. It's been a dead treaty. They have a treaty with him, and he's been making treaties ever since.
Well, under what authority? I mean, I don't buy that. When God stated that He would return, I don't believe He handed any authority over to a church, a pope, a bishop, a whatever.
Well, I don't either, but it's by the authority of deception and the authority of the sword.
I come. He didn't say. What he was saying was, you be the trustees of my property until I return. That's what he said. He did not say, I give you the authority over anything. Terror, I come.
I'm aware of what you're saying, but I'm telling you that they're doing this by deception and tyranny and terrorism.
It's a sham legal process.
Yeah. They're terrorists. These are all terrorist corporations, all of them.
Right. I'm not arguing about it. I'm just saying they're running a sham process.
Yeah. I'll give the floor back to whoever now.
Mm-hmm.
Did we cover your question, yes or no?
No, you got it.
Did we cover your question?
Oh, I was just stating I knew there was no answer to that question. I knew that they're doing it by terrorism. And these are terrorist organizations on the soil of the earth, and we're claiming to have a war on terrorism while we're all doing terrorist acts. And this
I'm not
sound
on
like
it. I agree.
what?
I agree with you.
I don't know how to prosecute them whenever they're running our courts.
Well, I want to throw in another point that in the new administration law, but they're calling or administrative rule, but they're calling it law, prohibits any state gun registration or register on boats illegal. Now, I thought Maine was a little further in the ocean, and maritime law and marine law is only on the ocean. It cannot be on city waterways, county waterways, state waterways, your own backyard, and you got your garden hose waterway. It's like, I'm going to be sponsoring this. And the sad thing is supposedly a Republican sponsored this bill, and I'm going to call his office tomorrow, chew his ass out, because this is one guy, once I get this 1938 done, I'm going to serve him and his employees in it. It's like these people are servants. It's like in the state of Oregon, they put in a gun confiscation bill that the governor and House of Senate passed, and they got it passed by the Vatican. And once you realize the Bible and the structure is running your courtrooms, and when you go to court because you fart in the wind like children have been being handcuffed in school for at a young age of even 7 and 8 years, and they're calling it an offensive odor. I mean, folks, have people lost so much reality of real life?
Well, if I may.
Go ahead.
They tried that water thing in Washington State years and years and years ago. In 1978, the state of Washington claimed they owned the aquifer. And they tried putting water meters on wells.
Oh, yeah, they did that in Oregon, too, and I killed Cool and Got Bill in 1999 and 2006. Go ahead.
But there was a class action suit with regard to that because water is part of your right of life. You can't live without water, and you can't live without crapping. Clark County, Washington, has a tipping fee on crap, on septic.
That in Toledo, too.
But, yeah, it's illegal. You can't tax somebody on the right to crap or to drink water or to eat. You can't tax groceries. You can't charge your sales tax on groceries or drugs that are essential to life. Your right of life.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to play this game where people don't stand up. They don't execute their rights. And, like Clark County, if you tell them you can't tax my right to take a crap, they'll give you that tipping fee. But they've got it set up now where septic tank is pumped every 2 years so they can get that tipping fee. It's a way of gaining tax. It's nothing more than a tax on your right to crap. And it's unlawful, but they don't care about law much. They have no use for law, in fact. They're a legal entity. They're a corporate entity, and corporate is fascist.
That's a fact. But the other point is that I've had major discussions with different people, and I'm even talking like to the public servants. And they keep saying, well, health care is not covered in the Constitution. The Constitution says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So without life and liberty, what do you mean it's not covered? Say, without life, you have no rights. And I get tired of these men and women who are brainwashed and uneducated that go along with this crap because these people have their own personal investments. It's like the jails are privately owned in this country. That's why we have the highest incarceration in the world. And that's where people don't get it. They're owned by security guards, jailers, cops. Anybody who's involved in law enforcement invests their stocks and bonds back in it. Go look at the stock market on privately owned jails. You know, we have a privately owned jail in my county until 1994. And I spoke against this bringing in the double democracy into this country, in this territory, whatever you want to call it, in my county. And I spoke heavily against it, and I told them what was going to happen. And then, you know, it's like when I recalled the school board back in 2002. I recalled the entire Lincoln County School Board for fraud. I could literally prove $30 million invested. I had the state attorney general. I had the House and the Senate members. I had the district attorney, all trying to put me in federal prison for exposing the fraud. And we had a guesstimate of $150 million. Plus, not only that, me and the associate, we filed our 10% retaining finder fee on it. Because when you prove that the government embezzled or stole money, you get 10% of the finder's fee guaranteed by their own administrative rules. It goes back to the piracy days in England. So, you know, there are some things that are good. 1914 Workman's Comp Act. That came from the old piracy days when you were a pirate and you lost a limb in war, or you lost your life, rape, robbing, and stealing, that they had to send compensation back to your family. And that's what the work was founded on. Go ahead, Dave.
The Supreme Court ruled the income tax was unconstitutional in 1895. So you allowed 10% of your findings.
Yeah, that was in 1895. Go ahead, Dave.
Think about that one.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like workman's comp is supposed to be there to protect you, and everybody's going, oh, we don't want insurance, we don't want this. We're already insured by the first certificate bond and claiming it. We're not supposed to be able to go to the bank and collect $1 million. We're supposed to go buy our food and our water by autographing and signing this stuff off. H.R. 192. And that applies to lawful bloodline Americans only. It does not apply to any immigration compared to what I argue with people on immigration. Says, I have the right to travel free. I have the right to do this in your country because I just came and invaded your country, so I guarantee these rights. No, it don't work that way. You're privileged personnel, and I mean privileged personnel. That goes back to the 1871 contract of the Civil War that we fought with the British government, the North.
Isn't it the nation state of Ohio, the nation state of Florida, the nation state of Oregon?
Yes, it's the state of, not that. You know, it's not the Oregon state. It's supposed to be, when you say state of, that's a corporation. Oregon state is not the corporation.
You got it.
You know, and how come people cannot comprehend that reality? It's so simple. Well, that's right. A lot of people don't want their people reading and research. And they do with, like, I guess Romans 13, as I call it, the Devil's Bible. Romans 13 says, I shall do what the government or Caesar tells me to do, and I shall not argue with Caesar.
What is it? Pay to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto man, or unto God the things that are God's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I heard a good story once between two ministers. They had had their sermon. They took the collection, and they were meeting in the back in the treasury room. And the one minister looked at the other, and he said, okay, now I'm going to throw this collection up in the air, and what God wants, let him pick it out of the air.
I remember that old one. That was in a movie, a 1940 movie.
Oh, was that where it was? I knew
Yeah,
I heard it somewhere, but I couldn't remember where. But I thought that was appropriate.
Yeah, it was a Southern movie that they did in the South. I think it was like in Louisiana or Alabama. It was one of those movies that was done in the 1930s. And I can't remember the name of the movie because when I was growing up, besides work, I watched a lot of these old-time movies. And I hate it when my computer goes off and changes itself to something else.
But isn't that the way the Pope and the Queen look at the bounty that's taken in every week by the church?
You got it.
And what God wants, let him take it, and then the rest of it we'll accept.
Mm-hmm.
He gave it back.
Well, and that's like when people go in and give a gift to the church and they're non-taxable, and people go, well, it's not taxable, we're allowed to do it. Now, when you watch these ministers that are flying around in $1 million jets, and they're going, I'm going God's work, so I need to be pampered in this manner. Well, Jesus didn't have a jet or anything. He walked around and helped the education and knowledge of what his knowledge was to pass on. So when these guys think that they have a right, to you paying their right of privilege to exist on this planet, that's where I think people sort of lose reality. Major reality. Because we're not supposed to pay the privilege. It's like, when they pass this law that says you're not supposed to, administrative rule that you're not supposed to collect rainwater. Well, excuse me, who gives you the right to say that I'm forced to pay the privilege to live and pay your salary? And then people would like to argue, and I've even heard ministers argue this in church, arguing in church on this right. This is what pisses me off. That, if God didn't want this, this wouldn't happen. And it's like, wait a minute, I could use the term God in every other sentence too and put fear in the minds of uneducated and terrified people like others do.
Well, it's like my niece told her dad one day when she did something that she shouldn't have been doing. She looked right at him and said, well, God told me to do it.
Oh, yeah. That's like that one kid that was shooting up a school says, God told me to do it.
Can they prove her wrong?
Oh, yeah, that's why the kid's in jail still.
Gee. How can that be?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she should have subpoenaed God to testify on her behalf.
That's right.
Let's see how far that subpoena would go.
Yeah.
Well,
I love it.
With the trial if God never responded to the subpoena?
Yeah, well, it's like this guy just commented. There's another guy, another Muslim who just butchered a woman in witness of her 3 kids, or 2 children, in front of a church. And it's like, this man should be beheaded right in public right now because people witnessed him stabbing this woman to death. He doesn't get a jury trial or anything. The jury trial is supposed to be when you have no factual evidence and a man or woman cannot be falsely accused. But when you have, 30 witnesses, I don't consider that being falsely accused.
Oh, I don't either.
I mean, especially with some of these people today, have got these video phones that they have today, and they video this stuff right on the spot. To me, that's factual evidence.
Pictures worth 1,000 words, they say.
That's right. That is a certified fact on that one. Not hearsay evidence.
Correct.
Go ahead.
So does anybody else have any questions, comments?
Throw in your thought.
That appears to be everybody on the Q&A session.
Okay. So, but this is the point. And the one thing is, I know that some of these immigration groups have gone after and attacked me and Dave on Facebook and stuff because, you know, we're not going for a dream act. Well, when you wake up from the dream to reality, hello, people, come to some facts here. And the other point is that some of these foreigners are setting up like their own court systems that are doing something like what they call a continental judge. And if anybody actually reads what a continental structure is, and they say, oh, well, the continental, what is that called? Colonies, when they started, the 13 colonies that wanted to get away from England. Okay, that is the point, people. They wanted to get away from England. So you have to know the circumstances of waking up in Roman Christianity, because Christianity used to be men and women themselves, if they believe it, just like the Roman Catholics. And I was having a major conversation with a gentleman the last couple of days, and we were having a conversation on the structure of Roman Catholic law and Christianity. And I'm explaining to him, I said, so he's going, well, they're separate. I said, how come they're separate? Because if you go back in history, one ended up marrying the other with Constantine in structure, and it all comes down to the same structure. And I've had the same conversation with another couple on this one. And it's like when you go back to the Roman days, then you go back to the Christian days, and then you go back to the structure, let's say 1880s, where the native men and women were given contaminated blankets, and then they give them the Bible to pray for the ones who are actually murdering them and their family. You know, that's what it gets to me. I'm like, how can you sit there and not comprehend that the Bible was given to these men and women, for these men and women to pray for the men and women that were murdering them and their bloodline?
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Dave.
Got a problem with that.
Go ahead.
You hand a Bible, and what language was it printed in, to a Native American who had never been taught English?
Mm-hmm.
And expect them to comprehend it.
Well, don't forget, the Christians were the ones that were taking the native children, cutting their hair off, and giving them what they call Christian names.
That's all well and good, but the Constitution gives Native Americans the right to self-government. The church had nothing to say about it.
That's right. That is the main point, and that's the one thing that no religion, not even a pope, has a say in any of it.
Right, and didn't the original Indians, I mean, since they were mentioned in the Constitution, doesn't the Constitution apply to them?
Not only that, but isn't it a true fact that the men and women who were involved in writing the Constitution comprehended what hemp was, what it did, what the fabric did? You could live on it, you could make paper out of it, you could build it.
That's true.
And then they say, oh, you're not supposed to have this. Well, they can make listen to me carefully, people, administration rules that affect elected public servants, registered church member, and immigration. It does not protect to lawful bloodline Americans.
Right,
you know, and that is the point. Go ahead, Dave.
If I comprehend right, there's 27 industries that can be made from hemp alone.
Mm-hmm.
That would increase jobs. That would increase the farmers' soil content because of the root system of the hemp. Woo! And it would give him another crop to grow every year.
Not only that, but that's the one thing that Congress right now today is trying to pass an administrative bill so you cannot sell your food if you grow it on your land, barter your food if you grow it on your land, do anything with your food on the land. Basically, they're trying to claim it belongs to the government, And that is the same thing as former Representative Terry Thompson, Lincoln County Commissioner, passed administrative rule that took the subsistence in 2000, the subsistence fishing quota, to lawful blood Americans only. In 2000, they passed it and gave it to the commercial fishermen. I know. I'm in recorded history proving the fraud throughout the entire state of Oregon on it. I'm in congressional records proving it. I even at the congressional record proved that Patty Burke lied, the former assistant director to ODF&W, part-time attorney, lied to the world. And she got paid by what? Oh, the Vatican, the church. So it's all fraud. These people lie. You know, when they don't support your rights. You know. And it's like, you know, I love it how people are going to ties to Russia with the Vatican, I mean, Trump and all this. And what mostly pisses me off, these are Democrats from foreign countries asking this. Now, that's the one point, people, you've got to realize when you sign these petitions, you know, even online, which country put it in? Whose country is stating this? Who's out for personal and financial gain because you're already programmed? Most of our people just programmed off of TV and internet just to sign anything. You know, and I'm watching this one guy on YouTube, you know, saying, oh, I'm passing this petition out so that way we can stop petitions, so that way we don't have a right to have petitions. And I sort of agree with that point, but the other point of it is that when you watch this guy do some of the petitions on it, it's like he had a petition on one thing he was doing called Sharia law. You know, of course, these are fake petitions, not real petitions. But he's like, well, shouldn't we have Sharia law? Do you support Sharia law in this country? And shouldn't Sharia law dictate to you? And 80% of the people that sign this have no concept of what Sharia law is in any fashion of the word. They have no concept of their own people in this country or their own bloodline. And I know that I talk to many people and they go, well, what does it matter if we're from this country or a bloodline? What does that mean? And it's like, hello, you don't comprehend what bloodline really means? And like I said earlier, you know, like with the one guy, I said, did you have kids? Well, yeah, it's two. Well, that's called a bloodline. That's like zebras have a bloodline. Monkeys have a bloodline. Fish have a bloodline. Any other mammal or even existence of anything that continues with a bloodline that bleeds blood, any color blood. That's a bloodline. Without that bloodline, there's no food resources, not only for you and I, but for the animals. You know, and, you know, mammals. And it's like, I find it stunning sometimes where people don't comprehend the facts of these issues. You know, they sit there and go, oh, well, it's like all of a sudden, you know, I'm watching people, and this is September. I thought Halloween wasn't for basically another 6 weeks away. And people are putting up Halloween designs and starting to do the Satan dance around my block. And you can see them teaching their kids Satanism through this. And they're, oh, that's not Satanism. And it's like, you ask them to please explain what Halloween is, and they're just like, it's a holiday. But they have no concept of the foundation of Halloween. They have no knowledge of the history of Halloween. No actual knowledge of anything of how we are doing today and what we're doing today by these satanic holidays. That's what really stuns me with people. They don't comprehend how bad we are in these positions. They don't. And then they want to sit there and then they want to shove religion down our throats. I mean, what happened to the days? Most of us kids, you know, we used to climb trees. We used to drink out of a garden hose. We used to ride bikes without a helmet. We rode in the back of pickup trucks. We rode without seat belts and covered wagons. You know, doesn't matter if it's a covered wagon 150 years ago or a vehicle covered wagon with a motor today with horsepower, because horsepower means horsepower. There is no separation. And how come people do not comprehend this reality? That's what sort of stuns me.
Well,
everybody comes up with these. Go ahead, Dave.
Today they want to sell you a license plate for your horse-drawn covered wagon.
Mm-hmm. A permission slip to travel on our property. The Constitution, folks, gave us right, not the Bible. The Constitution says you have a right to travel. The Bible says if you read the Bible, you had to pay to cross the bridge. Anybody comprehend the real meaning of what the Bible says when you had to pay the privilege to travel through counties and states? That's what says me, The Constitution.
Well, we have a Constitution, Ed. It established what your rights are.
Mm-hmm.
And like again I said, where do you find the common law written?
There is none. And they brought it from a foreign country. Isn't that terrorism and invasion?
Well, I want to see it. They want to tell us that constitutional law falls under common law. So where's common law?
Mm-hmm.
Show me the common law. Show me the money.
Well, that's where everybody goes off on these tangents of common law jury. What's a common law jury? A jury is supposed to be, technically, if you do real factual history, a jury is supposed to be 6 men of the guilty party and 6 men and women of the innocent. So 6 men and women of the guilty, 6 men and women of the innocent, because people used to actually live in the community, not run from one state to another, hiding from their own personal identities or their lies, their crimes, whatever they have harmed somebody else to hide behind, like the Democrats and Republicans today set up. It wasn't until 1968 when the Democrats got elected to the House and Senate. Prior to that, there was no democracy in this country until 1968.
There still isn't any democracy in this country.
Good
Anyone
point.
who says there is committing treason against the Constitution.
And we the people.
What did we say, Ed, at the beginning of the show with Mr. Skelton?
Mm-hmm. And don't forget, Mr. Skelton was an immigrant.
I think he was from Canada, wasn't he?
I thought he was from Scotland, but maybe you're right and I'm wrong. We'll have to correct that on the next week talk show to make sure that we have that. We should have that one on our mind.
We'll look that up. But I was thinking that Red himself said one time that he was from Canada.
Well, as soon as I get back online, I'll actually type it in and we'll handle that here now. But when he said when he was a kid, there was only 48 states, and God was not part of the flag speech.
That's true, wasn't it?
Right.
Was it 1950-something that they added it?
That's right.
53, I believe. If I'm right, 53, but don't quote me on it.
Yeah, well, you got to listen to it because I think he says the actual date in it.
Okay.
But that's the point that we should have that one. But as soon as I get back online, I'll find out what country he was born.
Every state constitutionally established is entitled to a Republican form of government.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when you pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, show me a democracy.
Well, not only that, what gets to me about the argument that people are going through with the NFL today. Oh, well, the NFL is doing this and they're kneeling to the flag. Well, I grew up that we stood to the flag with pride. Because the flag was the symbol of this country united under 48 states.
That's true.
So when people go off on these other excursions and saying, well, this, that, and the other thing, it's like, and they get this terminology, and I argue with people literally all the time about the terminology of the word democracy. And I ask them to prove stuff to me. Then they can't prove it. They can sit there, yell and scream, or they ignore the hell out of me because they can't prove I'm wrong. They can't prove that what they're trying to talk about is bullshit.
You know, I did not see the flag itself that they were dissing. So I don't remember if it was a gold fringe flag or the standard American flag. Do you remember which one it was, or did you see it?
Say that again?
The flag that they were flying that day, was it the parade flag of the military, or was it the standard?
Oh, I don't know. I gave up watching sports way back in the 1980s. After the 1980s, when it went commercialized, I just gave up on it.
Melissa said that it was a standard American flag.
Oh, yeah, as long as it's not gold fringe, but they fly their gold fringe in court buildings and public buildings.
I don't even pledge allegiance to that piece of crap.
Hell no, I don't. When I went to school in California, we didn't have gold fringe flags in our school.
Oh, the FBI office had a gold fringe flag in it, Edward.
Huh?
The FBI office had a gold fringe flag flying in it. So I got the security guard over there, and I said, I want you to go look up Executive Order 10834 by Dwight David Eisenhower, and then I want you to go arrest the guy who's responsible for flying this in this office.
Yeah, what does this look like?
It was a gold fringe flag. I told him that was color law fraud.
Right.
And he looked at me strange, and I said, if you don't believe me, go to Executive Order 10834 by Dwight David Eisenhower and read it.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who's responsible for hanging that flag there is guilty of treason against the Constitution.
That's a fact.
He looked very concerned.
Yeah, well, they're slowly waking up to the truth.
His question to me as a security guard is, how did you find this out? It's called research.
That is a fact. Well, I find it very interesting because Red Skelton claims that he came from another country, but in his biography and on the internet it says that he was born in Vincennes, Indiana.
Vincennes, Indiana?
Let me get back here where I just read it. Vincennes, Fincenes, Indiana.
I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
But I'm just going with a guesstimate, like public.
But if he was born in Indiana, he was not a foreign subject.
Oh yeah, that's the one thing I find interesting in his statement. You know, he came to this country, you know, so that's the one thing that when you think about that, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
I do like his take on the Pledge of Allegiance.
I know, I do respect his point on the Pledge of Allegiance because he nails it, and that's actually right from congressional history, too.
That's right.
So it's interesting when you read some of that, and I'm trying to look up where his parents were born, and I'm not getting anything on that right now. You know, it's interesting because it just depends on who's writing the Facebook structure. I mean, not the Facebook, but the so-called history or writing the book, because sometimes people don't write their own book like Obama and George Bush, like Clinton. They don't write their own book. I thought it was funny how they said that Clinton's book sold more than Trump said. 2-to-1. It helps when you're paying people to go buy your books to raise it to be the number one in the thing. And then she paid people to buy the book out of, what was that? The Clinton Foundation fund, because they have to burn up the funding because they got bust, so that way they don't go to jail for how much they have embezzled. So they got to send the money somewhere.
Sure. Maybe the Clinton Foundation bought Tate Publishing.
Yeah, that's an interesting story because we had quite a few things there that would open up the whole eyes of the circumstances, including with the police department in it, that proved the fact that police are no different than the Nazis because they're not honoring their oath of servitude. So they're identified as Nazis.
Wow.
So, that's the point.
I have to address this book deal tomorrow.
Yeah.
Put it on your agenda for tomorrow that you and I must write a letter.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Remember, I have an appointment for most of the day tomorrow.
All right,
We do have another caller waiting.
All right, caller, go ahead. The floor is open.
Oh, yeah. Hey, guys. I don't have so much a question. Just wanted to say hello and let you guys know I appreciate you going on. So thanks a lot.
Well,
you're welcome.
We appreciate.
I hope what we present to you is educational enough that you present it to your friends.
Yeah. I was explaining to Edward that I had a little success in a family court on last week on Tuesday, and I challenged the judge's name different than on his license, and then of course everything in a box. So I was pointing out the syntax errors, and I asked about my constitutional or my civil rights in a custody case, and then the judge says he's going to give me an order, and I said, I'm sure I must have surrendered some authority to you. So could you show me where I signed to do that? Where this is contractual law, right? She didn't have anything to say about that. And then, but it's fun to put the questions to them, like, so then she gives me the order. I says, well, order's no contract word. Well, she wants me to pay this instead of paying. It's ridiculous. I've been mailing the child support payments directly to my kids, so they want me to pay the child enforcement agency directly, and I just said I'm not doing it. I don't know them. I don't have a contract with them. I don't owe them anything. And so the judge says, well, I'm going to give you an order to do it. And I said, well, fine. It's a no contract word, and I don't see the contract. But yeah. But then at least they kind of stood down a little bit because they were wanting me to bring in all my financials. And then when the ex heard that she's got to bring hers in, she backed down. So it's
what you need to bring forth is to the judge. Is she acting as the prosecutor or as the judge? Because the attorney's the prosecutor. So in other words, if she's acting as the prosecutor and he's acting as the prosecutor, that's a good argumental point on your part.
Yeah, in fact, she was, Michelle, and I did bring up that argument. I wouldn't have thought to do it, but she said, well, what do you have to say? And I just said I object, to this whole proceeding. It's ridiculous. But yeah, she was defending the attorney because she was saying, oh well, I'm certain that he is a registered, that he's licensed to do business in the state. Well, fine. So here she is. She's defending a fraud.
Well, yeah, because she's going on hearsay evidence, isn't she? Where's the evidence?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Whatever you do, just make sure you keep saying I object, because when you object, that means you can bring that back into court, okay, if you lose. So just make sure I object to your whatever, even though, she makes her final statement, whatever, you just say, well, I object, and da-da-da-da-da. So that way you can bring it back into court.
Well, don't forget one of the major points that when he tries to claim, what do they always do to us all the time? They claim that, oh God, brain fart. Dealing with the court, when you're going in, they try to tell you, you're claiming that fraud upon the court is what the deal is, but when they contempt of court, when they tell you you're in contempt of court, when the judge starts going off on that, you can always put on record, are you not in contempt of court? Can you prove that you're not?
Yeah, and just so in case you don't know what contempt of court means, look it up, because contempt of court means that you had filed late on an answer, and that's when they throw that contempt of court. So if the judge does pull that on you, ask her on what grounds. On what grounds is she holding you in contempt of court? And
then you follow up and state, are you not in contempt of court? You have to follow up.
Especially if they're not answering to him on his requests pertaining to the court itself.
Right. Yeah, that's what we just said. Yeah.
And I'm going to hold you in contempt of court, and the opponent on the other side, because they have an answer to my request. So you can play the game both ways.
You still always put those things in writing and file it with the clerk. And I think then I send you the clerk structure. Where the clerk is in violation of their oath in filing paperwork, they could actually lose their job under federal government rules that fund the court systems and the clerks, because it's funded by the federal government, not the states where people think it is. So when they violate federal administrative rules, that's where they can lose their budget to the court, and that's the one thing that we're working on with this 1938. So once we start filing this, we can start shutting down the courthouses.
Well, and that's a good point. And keep in mind, too, that falls under the jurisdiction. So you can challenge the judge. Well, what jurisdiction are you referencing to, Your Honor? Well,
you don't want to say that. You want it in writing. I want this in writing, what you're claiming.
And he is in court.
Speaking, it's called evidence. It's inadmissible to
the... If you hadn't done that as you're claiming, then absolutely...
Right.
Or arguing or talking over each other like that, otherwise I will start kicking people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But like I said, you can always put in, after a court session, respond back in writing. And they don't want to respond back in writing after a court, because they think that it was handled in the way that they're able to walk away from the court, stating that they controlled you in that courtroom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It doesn't look like you have any kind of rebuttal, like you're agreeing if you don't.
Right, because they're saying in their mind, when they do that to you, you're agreeing to their terminology without a rebuttal. And that's where you just hit that one right on the head of the nail. Because now you can always rebuttal to that, because you have 21 days to respond to that rebuttal. After that, that way it becomes their administrative rule, claiming by their administrative rule of the court. And so when you rebuttal that in writing of what they're trying to clarify, and you want to clarify it, and then when you go back into court the next time, when they call what they call session in the court, you said, we have a matter before this session can be called back in to clarify these points of view.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Ed.
Well, see, people don't think about a lot of this stuff when they're in and out of court. And once you've been in and out of court enough times and you've been hit by the baseball bat in a sense of going through a pinball machine, you sort of start looking at this. And when you do the reading and research of the court systems like all three of us have done, you start looking at these things and you start going, oh, I can see how this works. I can see how that works. I can see what they're doing in this structure of this point of view. And that's the point that you want to bring back to their point of view, because they're running administrative court out of a foreign country. They have a contract to do the Constitution law first, and they're only supposed to address the administrative rules and administration laws only with elected and public servants, registered church members, registered voters, and all immigration. And also people are claiming immigration saying I'm a national or a citizen. Because, see, a national citizen, if you look up in the dictionary, says I'm a volunteer to a group, and I basically bow to that group. I don't have a say. I'm just going along with what they say. And I think they call that democracy.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So those are the points that what's going to be happening in these issues that are coming up, that when people go through these trials and tribulations, it's like Dave said when he brought the point of the flag up in the court, into the FBI building. These people are slowly listening, because I know in 2 states now, in Arizona and Arkansas and Louisiana, or 3, that they're starting to pull the gold fringe flags out of the local court. They're not changing the status of the local court at this point, but they're replacing the flags in the court with the real flag that they're supposed to be flying. Technically, they should be flying a peace flag.
Exactly.
And go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess somebody challenged them here on it years back. I've been talking with this old-time attorney. And what's interesting is that the attorneys, especially, this guy's like 85, but they really want to act within the system, within the structure, and I think it's hard for them to comprehend trying to make a claim or something out of motion or something like that. So that was what I did. Was I had a claim, and I asked her why she was enforcing the paying part of the divorce decree, but she wasn't addressing the visitation side. So it was all one-sided, And
go ahead, Michelle.
I just want to bring something to your attention, because you're dealing with, evidently, with separation or whatever, child support. Keep in mind, the reason why the judge is demanding you to answer to her or ordering you to answer to her is because what she is trying to do is move forward with a final judgment. When you answer to the judge or the court, or you're ordered to answer to your plaintiff, the reason why they're doing that is because they want to move for a final judgment. Because what you do when you answer to them, you fall into their jurisdiction. Now, before you answer to the order or to the judge, you object if it's something that is not in your favor. If it's something in your favor and she's just asking for clarification, that's one thing. But if you're in court and that judge orders you, or she's telling you to answer to the plaintiff, then you say, is that an order? You want her to say that's an order, because if it's an order, you can object to her order and then answer to the order, because it's going to be in your favor, because you can object, and then you put in your answer as notice of default against the judge on that order. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Well, the other point on that one, too, is to be bringing in the point where she's trying to, as she has mentioned to you before, trying to make sure that you pay the state child support, and so that way they can claim it as their information, so they can claim your bank account and assets, and land through the state that is going to govern that land and assets to the children without nobody's permission and knowledge or acceptance. And if they could get away with this, I mean, I've done enough children's cases around here on the West Coast. I've seen it more than enough, and it takes a lot of people to stand up to a judge in court compared to just paying a fine or just saying that, this is the way it is and I'm just complying. It does take a lot of that to have initiation from you to stand up to it, and that's like what I'm saying to you is that you are starting to see movement on it. You are an intelligent man that's taking a lot of theories in by different other people, and you're balancing out the theories and you're testing them. In a sense, you are testing them in the courtroom, and you are seeing how different ones are complying with each other and how they are actually working in your benefit. Would that be a thought?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had filed a void judgment into the case and a revocation of signature and a notice of trust. And I asked the judge about all those things. She said, "Well, there's no hearing on it." And I said, "Well, that's fine." And then I asked her, "Did she take an oath?" And she said, "Yes." So then I repeated 3 times, "I accept your oath. I accept your oath. I accept your oath." And boy, she kind of looked flustered at that point. And then she started looking over at the other attorneys like, "Oh boy, what now?"
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's the other point too. As soon as I get that one to you, you want to file that. But seeing that she's accepted her oath and you accepted her oath, you want to ask, now you can put into for conflict of interest statement to the clerk, to the prosecuting attorney, and your former half attorney. And you could ask for a conflict of interest because you have her on record that you accepted her oath. She did not disagree with it. So she complied under their administrative rules on record.
And ask for a copy.
So you see how that just worked how you just set that in your behalf.
Yes.
I just want to bring one thing to the gentleman's attention, because it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job. Whatever you do in your documentation, as you're addressing the court and in your paperwork, make sure you put in your paperwork that you're addressing that you want to dismiss the case in your favor. See, a lot of we get so focused on what to say and what to do in our paperwork, but we forget to move the court forward and request for a dismissal for lack of evidence. Now, I'm talking, of course, regarding your case, as it would be your wife or whatever the issue is that you're fighting up against. So you want to request for a dismissal due to lack of evidence that you're fighting up against, meaning your opponent, if the opponent or the opposing attorney is not bringing things into court to back them up what they're saying, so you can object. I object. Where's the evidence?
Right.
Remember, if they don't have evidence to bring into court as to what they're saying, you can object to that because there's no evidence. It's all hearsay. It's on hearsay.
Right, and it has to be factual evidence.
That's
Facts
right.
evidence that they have to provide. Because anybody can bring something in that can claim evidence. We know it's hearsay, but you're the one who has to initiate the facts of it. And not only that, did they file an affidavit to prove it? Because an affidavit, when you file an affidavit, clearly states that you're willing to put your life on the line for that statement.
So make sure when you go to court next time that you ask for a copy of the affidavit, because the opposing attorney, if she has an attorney, is supposed to fill out an affidavit regarding the court. So you need to ask.
Fact. And if there's no affidavit on file from that, when you file your structure.
Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost you there.
Oh,
No, I don't know what
I think
happened
we
there.
lost Ed. I think we
Right.
lost Ed just now.
Okay.
But anyway,
Sorry.
do you comprehend what Ed is saying? In other words, you have to, whatever you bring into court or whatever you talk about in court, you want to put it in writing and submit it to the clerk of the court, what you're bringing in as to what you're claiming. And you also have to bring in, or should be bringing in, some type of evidence to back up your claim. Are you doing that, or have you done that?
Not really. No, I haven't.
Okay.
But,
well, then guess
yeah.
what? Then all that is all hearsay. In other words, it's your word over her word. So if you have evidence at home to back up what you're stating in court, you want to bring that evidence into court. Evidence speaks louder than words. Otherwise, what the judge is doing is just sitting there listening to you and listening to whatever she's saying. But if you can bring evidence in to back up what you're stating in court, you will win over her. Because now it is no longer hearsay.
Right.
Yeah,
But that's the point that I'm bringing to you, is to put it in writing going back through the case, and then you can sit there and claim that, and then you want to put in writing, too, for her to clarify on the fraud upon the court, because if she's continuing in this manner, she is exercising fraud upon the court. And that's what you don't want. And once you start putting the case together and start winning the case, then that way we start getting to the point where you're controlling the court, you're controlling the movement, you're controlling the statutes, you're controlling the circumstances, the way that the injured party is supposed to do, especially with the bloodline that is equal. They cannot sit there and divide the bloodline that they do and saying that we're going to destroy the family because we're going to get a cut of the pie from their assets. And that's one thing that when judges force men and women to sell land, to pay off one or the other, if people actually put their structure in an affidavit, claims that the land is for their bloodline and not to be separated in the corporation structure, and of the corporation structure. What I want to do is keep it out of the corporation structure. And it's like, that's the one thing that, people say, oh, I'm going to donate my land to and they don't care about their family. That's what disturbs me, how people don't think about the bloodline that they brought into our country and our territories. They're children, but when a man starts standing up for his rights to do this, then everybody starts going against him because, I hate to say it in some ways, the wrong way the women's movement, women live movement moved. If you actually go through history, women are not as happy as they were in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, taking care of the home and responsible until they really started getting involved in TV and that stuff. Because women used to educate the children. They used to read the books with their children, while the man was out there working and providing for the family and making sure that they had shelter and making sure the roof over their head was secure and those type of things. And that is the one thing that we need to do, is to make sure those things really do happen. So that, there goes another chalk up. But that is the one point that it comes to personal responsibility, and our court systems are not allowing men and women to be personally responsible for their bloodline. They want to try to claim it under the birth certificate and under the Vatican Treaty of 1213, stating how they own people's blood in their family. Well, it's like, I collect rainwater, and people go, oh, you're going to go to jail for collecting rainwater. And I keep telling them, hey, I don't care what you think. Okay, I might go to jail that they might claim, but I'm not going to go to jail because they can't arrest me for what the Great Spirit and Mother Earth and the Creator gave me. They can't arrest you, as people call it, a.k.a. God, but I go by a different terminology, as most people know. But they can't kidnap you and hold you for ransom and hostage for what the Great Spirit gave us. And when they start doing that, that even violates their own constitution, their own treaties, their own administrative rules. That's why it's so apparent to read the administrative rules, to read the court functions and how they do it. I do suggest people, I do not file any way that people want to say, oh, you need to file this way in a court. I do not file those ways in court because I know if I file those ways in court, I'm giving the court's administration permission to dictate to me. That's why when I file in court, I quote it as an affidavit of fact. And when you're quoting an affidavit of fact, and you want to make sure, anytime, right to travel, hunting, fishing, cases that you're dealing with, even family stuff, the one thing that you always want to do in those circumstances is to hang them into the county commissioner's office, the local police departments, all public bulletin board, and including make sure that you file it in a local circumstances of, what is that called? Museums. Museums can only put factual evidence in museums. They cannot put anything that is not true. Artifacts. They have to put real artifacts. And museums are getting caught today with fake artifacts, and they're not putting it in the mainstream media. Because if they put some of that stuff in the mainstream media, we realized how bad we have been actually convinced and lied and had fraud committed against us for, going back in some of it a couple hundred years. It's like they keep saying, well, the dinosaurs lived a million years ago, and now they're coming out with this new structure saying the dinosaurs only lived 25,000 years ago. So it's like questioning what they're saying now. It's like I go by questioning science today compared to questioning the facts. We have to know, I'm saying that again, and I know my chart's going up, but we have to realize that when we're quoting these structures that we're reading, we have to know if they're real or not. And that's the one thing that we need to do investigation. When you go hunting and fishing, you figure out the bait to use for the fish. It's like, one thing like in Oregon Territory, in some of our rivers and streams, they say, oh, you have to use artificial bait. You cannot use worms. Oh, you cannot use, crickets and frogs and different other stuff as bait to go fishing. Excuse you, what? That's what they eat. That's what I use. But they're trying to push commercial industry in the fishing industry on us. And that has actually been provided by elected and public servants to do that for personal financial gain of their own gimmicks, their own structure, what they're doing against us. And that's where people have to start realizing that this is an attack on your freedom, lawful bloodline, and immigration. Because if you're not allowed to pass your assets and your bloodline down to your bloodline, what future is your bloodline going to have in the only country in the world that has a contract with the devil, as I call it the devil contract, that they brought from England, that gives you rights, not privileges? And that's what we need to stand on rights and privileges. And the privileges, that means we protect legal immigration so long as that they're paying their administrative rules and that they're following our guidelines in this country, the 48 states. And I love Red Skelton when he brings up the point that Alaska and Hawaii were not added until after the 1950s. But you have to realize and comprehend that's administrative rules that they were brought in. That was not of the Civil War with the British government. And Hawaii's been still run by the British government going back to the 16th century. And, when are we going to stop letting these people dictate to us their religion? And that's what it is when you go to court. It's religion.
It sure seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
And we're living that frustration. And then people sit there and teach their kid religion. They don't teach them how to hunt and fish. They don't teach them what the soil is. They don't teach them what the reading a track is in the woods, or they don't teach them the water and river system and the waterways in their areas. Because waterways, we're not supposed to be charged and paid to travel in waterways. And not only that, maritime law is 200 miles off of our countries. Once you get 200 miles out past our country line, that's when maritime law comes in effect. It's
Hmm.
so,
Law,
go ahead.
British law anyway.
Yeah, I know that. And
But I
that's-
thought they brought them in for the inland waterways too.
right, that's true. Anyhow, we got another one that wants to chime off. We'll
All right,
go
I'll
ahead.
get off. Hey, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Ray, we'll catch up with you soon. I'll get the other information to you, too, including on the court system. If not tonight, I'll have it to you tomorrow afternoon. Partly, I'll get it to you tonight.
I'll get off. Thanks so much.
Okay.
I'll yield.
Ed, I just wanted to add, that executive administrator, that state executive administrator,
Yeah.
that has a vested interest in the reason the state wants to collect through the state agency is they want the federal matching funds. If the man pays direct, they don't get any federal matching funds.
Right.
Now, if the mother goes on public assistance, up to $50 a month can go to the child. Remaining portions goes to the State Department of Revenue.
Right.
So the executive administrator sitting there in that black robe, acting as an administrator and not as a judge, has a vested interest in acting on behalf of the corporate state.
Mm-hmm.
And I yield.
Conflict of interest.
Well, yeah. But I comprehend what he said on that, and it is a conflict of interest. Go ahead, Dave. I didn't mean to jump in.
Well, I just wanted to make that known, because once he does something for his own personal gain, that's conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what he does, because the judge gets 25% of all income from the court for his retirement.
Yeah, that's a proven fact.
So therefore, he has conflict of interest in the matter.
Mm-hmm. And that's the main point why it's so imperative to respond back to these courts in writing. And that's why what I'm bringing up the other point, when you go into these courts, and when they call it adjourn, he said, no, we have a matter that we have to address before we adjourn, because you cannot move in this case until this matter is addressed. And it is knowing how the courts work, how attorneys do this to basically backstab us when we go into the courts, and how the judges backstab us. So like Dave and I say, they wrote it, we quote it, so we use their administrative rules against them. As they have to go against their administrative rules, that's when you file it federally and locally in the state on them, so that way they're the ones who get punished. And that's the point. It has to be done, and if we have any faith in our system, because if not, we might as well just go back to warring on our own land and say to heck with it and teach our kids it's all a war. There's no other structure, and that's what our forefathers didn't want, because they left the country and territories that were run by religion and run by a book. They weren't run by common sense or common, whatever you want to call it, you know. I call it, because I don't like common law and the word common, because that means common means everybody goes by democracy ruling part. But it's like common sense means, you know, and if you look at the dictionary, there's two wording meanings of that, including the Black Law Dictionary. So to me, it's like if common man says that, and I agree, like what we call and I say what we call, or what the Ten Commandments say, you know, thou shalt not lay with the neighbors and do all that stuff to bring heartache and frustration into the community and neighborhoods. I do agree with that point of view, you know, but that to me comes down to respect and honor amongst men and women. And that's the point that we have to realize, that we have to get back to respecting one another instead of arguing and fighting each other. It's like, I love it because like racism is the people that attack racism, and racism is religion. And I like it when George, go ahead. Somebody was speaking up?
No.
Okay. Well, I like what George Carlin does on his talk show when he starts going off on different words. And it's like, now we're told if you use a transgender word, like California passed administrative rule, that now you could go to jail for saying something that could offend somebody's feelers, opinion, diapers. I mean, you know, that's where people have got to stand up and start telling these politicians No, we're not playing this because, and that's the point that Daniel brought in. They are getting federal matching funds for these things to do it. And by their federal matching funds, they're able to match that for the tax write-offs in the states to go both ways into that for financial gain of the administration. It's like when elected and public servants say, oh, we don't have the money in retirement. And then these people say, oh, we borrowed against retirement. Legally, you cannot, House and Senate members, borrow against their own retirement. They can't do it. They steal from their retirement, bluntly steal it and embezzle it, and they should pay the consequences of those things, like going to prison for life. You know, that we don't have to sit there and suffer. We're not supposed to be suffering. It's like people say, oh, Ed, you know, you go against what the Bible says and stuff, so you're going to hell, and I keep telling them I'm living in hell. What's your point? You know, look at what our country is doing to the people in our country by the word called democracy, what it's doing to the children, what it's doing to the average man and woman. It's like, you know, where's the common sense of where's the intelligence? You know, accurate intelligence of man and woman. So anyhow, we're gonna open up the floor again, and then I think me and Dave will call it a night. It's been 2.5 hours. We got writing, and I still got hours of work ahead of me tonight. So I, want to bring out some of these points. I got some things I got to get to other people tonight too on their Facebook walls, and email a couple other things that I'm working on for a couple other people. So I want to bring these things to your attention that it's up to we, the people, to defend our bloodline, or your bloodline, because mine is dead. So, if you don't sit there and protect your bloodline and to prove that you're lawful or legal, you're not claiming you have rights. And when they call it a dream act, when you wake up from a dream, you come to reality. So there is no such thing as a dream act. That's just been put in place to confuse people and to make men and women on their own land fight against one another for some racial bullshit of a religion. Think about it. It's religious started. Religion controlled. So with that, I'll let Dave end up with his, and then I'll close mine up, and then we'll be working on a couple other new videos to go on. Oh my God, my numbers went up pretty high tonight. Anyhow, we'll be working on a couple other deals because I want a couple other videos I want to be able to bring in. But to watch the court system, how it really works, or get an idea of the concept of the court system, I encourage people to watch a movie called Interstate 60, a minimum of twice, because usually 2 times on a really good movie, you pick up a lot of the structure, what the message is that they're explaining to you, especially when they talk about euphoria, and that's what's going on today. And people have rights to their own personal medication. They own their own body. But until you claim your rights, you don't have rights. Knowing your rights and claiming your rights are the same thing. Not knowing your rights, you have none. So I encourage people to educate themselves. Dave?
Thank you, Ed. Well, it's been an interesting evening here at the OK Corral. The shootout seemed to have gone well. Educate yourself, people. That is the big issue. Ignorance of law is no excuse. Only pertains to those who have studied law, which they don't want you to know. So, be diligent and study. What's a good book say? Study to show yourself approved.
If you can catch them under perjury, you got me.
And if you can catch them under perjury, that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, with that in mind, I'll let you know that I had my visit with my doctor, and everything went well there. The numbers are where he wants them, and so for having a stroke, I'm doing good. So appreciate everybody's concern. With that, Ed, I'll say goodnight.
All right, I'll talk to you shortly. I would like to say thank you again, and this is the whole point. I'm glad to see that you recovered really good over the stroke on that, except for a couple little electronic twins in your brain. Twinges, nothing else, folks, nothing else, just twinges that he's dealing with. And this is the point of life that, working together, having faith in yourself is like I preach all the time. If it matters, it minds. If it don't matter, it don't mind. So if it minds to you, then you have to do something. If it don't matter, then what are you wasting your time for? And it's simple. It's that simple of life. And the other point is to prove that you love your bloodline. I don't have to love my neighbor, as people say. I don't have to love my neighbor. All I have to do is not cause my neighbor harm, make false police reports, false statements. And that's the point. If my neighbor wants to have a loud rock and roll party, okay, he only does it, let's say, 2 or 3 times a year. I have to be respectful of that because let's say if I decided one day to have a party, he's got to have consideration. We are supposed to work together on these points of life. And we work together on these points of life. That's how we solve the issues with each other, because we're supposed to work together with each other with respect, common knowledge of one another, because as Dave says, what he believes, or some people do, and I do in a sense, like the good book people say it is, do on you. And if you don't want it done to you, then don't do it to somebody else. So may the Great Spirit bless you. May the Creator bless you, and may Mother Earth provide the food and water to you, because without Mother, we don't have life. And that's the point, that people do not comprehend that factual reality. You cannot live on plastic food that they sell in the grocery store, cardboard food that's imitation in the grocery store, plastic rice that you get from Indonesia and China and some of these other states. Type in the food resources you're eating on the internet. See when they're coming from a foreign country, and it has to put where they're made from. And it even says on the package, what it's made from. It'll say 5 or 6 other ingredients beside rice on it. When it says more than one ingredient beside rice or calcium, that's it. Common knowledge, common sense. So bless that, and I'll end that with that one, and travel safe.
Well, I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And this is true. I work in the summer, and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. He says, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, and a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose, all divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
Thank you for listening. You've been listening to The Disclaimers by Davidlee Buess and Edward Johnston. Today's date is September 25th, 2017, and y'all have a good night.